Hi, I'm really excited to be doing this video. I'm going to be looking at the work of Lene Marie Fossen, who is a outstanding photographer. And so the first part of this video, we're going to be looking at her artwork. And very much she intertwines with her artwork. She actually becomes the subject of her artwork in a lot of the photographs that we're going to be looking at. And so I'm really excited to, I'm just going to be interpreting them from what I see and what I read from what she's produced. So I'm not telling you what the artworks mean. I'm literally going to be looking at it myself and thinking about how the artwork speaks to me. And what's really fascinating about her artwork is it speaks to people in different ways, and everyone brings a different experience. And so this is going to be kind of, where I see her self-expression. And we're also, with this, we can't separate her condition from her artwork as much as we want to, and as much as I'm going to be looking at her as an artist to begin with. You can see how the illness that her particular illness has had its effect on her body, and how it affects her in terms of some of the restrictions she has in her life. And at the same time, it's that pain and that restriction that really feeds into the beauty and the depth of her artwork. So we're going to also see that kind of struggle as well. I'm going to say that Lene Marie Fossen was diagnosed with anorexia, and so but very much so as an artist, this is not where her point of discussion comes from. Her point is more about the universal expression of pain and beauty. Okay, so let's have a look at her artwork. I've put together a presentation. So I'm going to be showing you a selection of things that I think are just absolutely, stop you in your tracks artworks. And so then when we look at the video, it's very much going to be Lene Marie herself talking about her artwork, her practice. And so I don't want to put, take words from her. I want us to listen to her. Okay, so let's have a look at the presentation. All right, so I'm just going to share it with you, and then I'm afraid I haven't got the hang of starting it with it first. Okay, so we'll start from the beginning. Okay, so I'd like to say this is all the photography in this presentation is the work of the outstanding and moving photographer Lene Marie Fossen. Please visit Lene Marie's website, which is www.lenemariefossen.com. You'll be able to read about her artwork, see her artwork, and also they've had a touring exhibition of her work, which I'll talk about a bit later. So you can see their updates on where you can, go and see her artwork for yourself. Okay, so now I wanted to start here. Before we look at self-portrait, I want to look at portraiture, which Lene Marie has done of different subjects. So a lot of the people, like her sitters, they are children, or they're people of an older generation, because she's very fascinated in making these connections. And here she's been photographing refugee children in kiosks, and that was in 2015. So I'm just going to show you a selection of these children, and they're such fascinating, expressions. Okay, so this is our first child, and the depth in his eyes. you don't know what's happening, you don't know what's going on for him in his head, but you know that this child has been exposed to a lot of you know, what only even an adult would find hard to process. So we have another child here, and we have a couple of children lying down as well. And again, it's just that lost look on his face. But I mean, Lene Marie is taking the photograph. She's not setting the scene. She's in the sense of you know, props. She's not telling the children how to behave. She's taking a portrait of the child as the child is sitting. And so, you know, we can't take in the child's eyes, we can't take away the pain that we can see in him. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that and to see that, because this is the results that you have of refugee situations, of war situations. And that's, you know, our children that we need to look after. And so, you know, you can really see expressions on this child's face, which really you wouldn't hope to, you know, you would hope to never see on a child's face. I think but then you can also see he's a child, and you still got that beauty and vulnerability of the child. And I think that's what's so fascinating about her work, the way she is capturing the child. He's a child, but you can also see the pain and you can see the anguish. And I think the reason why a lot of viewers come to her work and feel very emotional and very overwhelmed is because you want to hug him, you want to take that pain away, but you're not in the position as a viewer to help this child. It's a photographic representation, but it does very much make people feel very driven to want to help children that they can help today. So you know, so I just think it's really, really hard-hitting and really important work. Now this is a completely different one. This is a really playful picture, and I think this is amazing. So there's something about these two children. It's like I feel like the smaller child is very playful and looks up to the older child almost. You know, I feel like the older child, she, even knowing she's been through a lot, she's got very deep eyes, but she's also got a level of, I'm going through this, but I've got hope. I'm gonna, you know, there's other things that are going to come for me, that are, you know, I'm going to do some amazing things if I get that opportunity. And I really hope that she does get that opportunity, because despite everything, there's a strength in this girl. And I think that Lene Marie captures this so beautifully. You know, that even knowing these children who've been through so much, through that trauma, they can actually really have so much strength and resilience, and they can and as they become adults, they can really teach other people. So, you know, I feel really positive looking at these two children here. You know, it's a really beautiful picture, and I think, you know, there's some real joy in between these two children. So this poor little baby here, you just want to, oh, but you know, the pain in the eyes, the tears, it's raw emotion. And Lene Marie really captures raw emotion, because I feel from, as a viewer, and I also feel from listening to her speaking about her experiences, that her sitter, or her you know, the person that she's connecting with and photographing, I feel like she really does connect with them, and they do become vulnerable to her. So they do have these expressions and of grief, and you know, she seems to be one of those people that can really make that connection between. Sometimes when you're going through trauma and you're going through grief, you really need that person who's got that, you know, they've got a delicate touch, and they've got a really beautiful way of, you know, interpreting the world, and you know, and that's not because Lene Marie has not suffered. That is because Lene Marie has her camera and she can photograph this beauty, even knowing it comes through pain. But you know, this photograph really actually reminded me of Diane Arbus. So if you look at the photographic works of Diane Arbus, they're in black and white. She's photographing children as well. And you know, well, I'll leave that for you to explore because we're talking about Lene Marie tonight, but it's just that real expression. Some of these, it's almost like some of the children that Diane Arbus photographs are very adult, and at the same time they're absolutely children, and it's that kind of tension. And I think we see a tension here, but here it's a tension because these children have been through a trauma which is way beyond their years. And so, you know, this is very, very Diane Arbus for me, in the sense that this child is literally, to me, she's like a child and she's like a full-grown woman at the same time. There's something very quirky about her, and very, you know, I feel like she has a lot to say. And I feel, you know, just from this photograph, that she has a defiance against what's going on or what's happened to her, or, you know, there's something there, there's an anger almost. And I don't know, that might not be the case. It's just what kind of comes through when you look at the photograph, you know, for me. You know, she comes across to me as an old soul, and she's very much a little girl. So it's a really interesting, again, a really interesting tension. And you can only imagine what's going on behind those eyes, and, you know, what she's been exposed to. And she's in a calm place now, you know. Well, you know, we can assume she's got the trees and nature, but in those eyes, you know that she's seen a lot of things. Okay, so this child, again, for me, he's like an old soul. He's like this little boy, but then he's got this oversized cap and he's got these big glasses. And, you know, there's something again in his eyes. He's just got so much he's seen a lot. He's got so much that he would tell you. But he's so small, he probably couldn't even express, you know, what he needs to express, because he hasn't got that stage of life with the vocabulary. But you know, you can take it from you can feel his emotion through his expressions and the way he's standing, and he's just adorable. So, you know, it's just, again, heartbreaking, but so important to acknowledge. These are the kind of emotions, these are the kind of things that we really shouldn't, you know, we need to examine, and we need to feel these feelings. It's not about, life isn't just about trying to smile all the time to cover up these kind of emotions. So I think it's really important when, you know, when the artist confronts you with these things. So, you know. Okay, so now we get to see Lene Marie, and we also get to see a different type of portraiture. So Lene Marie is just on the left here, taking the photograph. She's only partially in the photograph, but I absolutely love, and you'll see this as the videos go on, I love photographs of artists in action. So seeing them at work with their medium, how they do things. And if you see Lene Marie, there's no lighting, there's no setup here. In fact, you know, as we go on, she works with natural lighting, so she doesn't you know, employ all these different you know, technologies or techniques. It's just her, the camera, and the person that she's taking the photograph of. And here, this is when she's looking at a lady who's a bit older, and Lene Marie. And again, you know, I don't want to I'm not going to say too much what Lene Marie says. We're going to hear what Lene Marie says later, but you know, my understanding of her work is that she's fascinated in the lines and the way the skin changes, and you know, so she's fascinated in photographing people who are a bit older, who have the story on their face and on their body, you know, so that's really beautiful. So she has a lady here who's, you know, you can see her eyes, you can see the suffering in her eyes, you can also see that you know, she's very much lived a life where she's probably been exposed to the weathers, to traumas and challenges, and you know, even if she smiled, I mean, this is one of the things when you go through these situations, you know, it's all in the eyes. So even when she smiles, you can still see there's a depth there of emotion. It's a really fascinating picture, actually. I mean, it really reminds me of oh, sort of like, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've got Caravaggio in my head, and I was talking about that. In fact, I was reading an article about it and talking with someone, and I think it very much has that Caravaggio painter quality with the dark colors and, you know, the expression and the light. But for me, there's someone else I'm thinking of. But very much, you know, I'm basically, what I'm thinking of is that kind of religious, like religious painting. So I'm kind of thinking Renaissance, you know, maybe a bit later on, but that kind of dark, you know, background and colors, and the kind of the face is kind of the thing that it's almost like the lights on the face. It reminds me of, yeah, very much like a religious painting. You know, it's fascinating, and to think that she's done that without like a studio and a setup, and this is literally her connecting with another human being. Okay, so this is Lene Marie. This is a self-portrait of Lene Marie. It's not so much a self-portrait, but she features within the work. It's not a portrait, it's actually, but she's the photographer and the artist. And, you know, I love that. I'll talk about that a bit later, but, you know, that dynamic as being the photographer and the artist, and what you can achieve, you know, in that, with that kind of setup. So if we look at Lene Marie's work here, so this is in Chios in 2017. So she did go back to Chios, you know, this is somewhere that she really connected with. What I find fascinating about this work is the fact that, I mean, first of all, if we look at the actual building itself, and you can see the kind of the fabric of the building is it's decaying. It's almost like someone's come and ripped part of the plaster, or, you know, and expose those bricks. You know, then we've got the wood up there, which is partially falling. You know, there's a sense of decay again when we look outside the window, and that's really interesting as well, that window shape. I don't know if there's glass in there, but, you know, having that shape, it's like we're looking into another artwork almost. It's a really interesting perspective, because we've got the frame inside the building, the interior, and then we have the frame outside. And what's really interesting, I think, about Lene Marie and her positioning is that despite this is 2017, and despite that she is a young woman, you know, in 2017, this actually feels like it could have been taken, you know, 100 years ago. It also feels like she's part of, to me, this is my interpretation, so I'm just, you know, this is how I feel when I look at it, but to me, she's very much, she really adds, firstly, to the photograph. For me, she really you know, she adds another element to it, which is really fascinating. It feels like she's gone through the process of hardship and, you know, the torn fabric, it feels like she's experienced that with the building. It feels like she belongs there, like she was always there. That's how it feels to me. Or that like she has some kind of understanding of this ripped and falling and not perfect, and you know, almost like living a long life. It's like she's lived a long life even knowing she's really young. But I mean, just looking at it on a photographic level, you know, it's a really curious picture, because as well you can kind of see that she's a young person, but that she's been through something. She's been through a lot, and we don't know what she's been through, but there's definitely a pain. So I see the beauty in the setting and in the way that you know, the photographic element of photographing, you know, the building and so forth, but I can also see the pain. And if we looked at it as just at the building, you would have an expression of, you know, something, an expression of how this building was probably once brand new and, you know, fresh, and maybe a family lived there and now it's decaying. But with her bringing that human element, it brings up so many more questions as to what's happened here, how she's connected to it and how she's affected by it, or how she's mirroring it within the human body. It's just really interesting. You know, and the way she's dressed in a plain way as well. Okay, so obviously we can't do this with every photograph because I've got quite a lot, so I need to, you know, but you know, I find it very striking. And personally, when I go to the gallery, I can be there for 3 or 4 hours. So okay, this is Lene Marie. We really get to see Lene Marie now. So this is, you know, this is Lene Marie. And this is actually, I believe it's still, yes. This is a still from a film called Self-Portrait. It came out in 2020, you know, for cinematic. You know, so you could, I think you could go and see it at film festivals. The directors are Katja Hoogset, Margaret Olen, Espen Fossen. I hope that's well, well, I'm not so sure that's correct, but you know, I think it's important to mention that, you know, they directed this film, so it was in Norway, and they were following Lene Marie as a, you know, like a documentary to really look at her as an artist, her practice, what she does. But you know, very much what comes into that is her own self philosophies and kind of some of the things that that she does in her life, some of the restrictions she holds on herself, which it's almost that you can't not explore. It's when you have trauma on the body for whatever reason, whether it's through disordered eating, whether it's through an accident, whether it's through any kind of trauma that people can see, it's very difficult to separate it from you. So I think it's really important as the individual is how you interpret that trauma and how you deliver it or how you discuss it when it comes up for other people. And so, you know, I think that the way that Lene Marie explores it through photography is, and the way she exposes herself, because even knowing you can see the trauma on someone's body, that doesn't mean that they're in a position where they want to expose that to you with detail and recounting, you know, because it's a big energy shift and it's a very emotional thing to do. And so, you know, I think that it's really, yes, it's a very challenging thing to do. So for her to not cover it up as a subject, but for her to say that it's not the first thing I want to talk about my personal trauma, but I know that from that trauma I can really explore it as a topic, as a subject, and, you know, pain, I can really have that in my artwork and have really profound, make really profound artworks which speak to vast amounts of people. But when you have disordered thinking of any description, so whether it's an eating disorder, a post-trauma, you know, this is very personal, and, you know, very much with eating disorders, it's very secretive. So for someone to be able to come out and say, you know, talk about it, you can only show them so much love for that, because it's one of the hardest things that you can ask someone to do. So, okay, we're going to, so there's a film of, if you would like to find it, and try and see if you can see it. So it was, so it's called Self-Portrait. And this is a point where I feel that I should share something sad with you. This film was released in 2020, but very unfortunately, very sadly and devastatingly, there's no way to frame it. Lene Marie, she didn't make it in the end. She didn't make it through her battle with her condition, with her anorexia, and so we say goodbye to Lene Marie in 2019. And that's why I really wanted to look at some of her work first. I didn't want to introduce Lene Marie from this point. I wanted to introduce her from the point of her photography. Okay, so this is one of the most outstanding works that Lene Marie has done. I'm not, I mean, all of her work is outstanding, but this, for me, this is breathtaking. Okay, but first of all, I want to read a bit about her from, now I've taken this directly from her website. Sorry, I sit with my legs crossed, but I need to lean forwards. I've taken this directly from her website, so it's text from Lene Marie Fossen's website at www.lenemariefossen.com. And I've taken this paragraph from there because I don't want to write an interpretive piece about Lene Marie. I want to get as close to her as we can. So this will have been written by someone very close to her. Okay, so Lene Marie Fossen was an autodidactic Norwegian photographer. So she's self-taught. I believe that she received her first camera when she really got into the photography at around 15 years of age. She rejected the linear progression of time that forced her to go through puberty and stopped eating at the tender age of 10. She struggled with anorexia for the rest of her life. Fossen chose to be open about her disease and found her means of expression in photography. It's a really fascinating, I wonder if she would have gone, you know, more into film as well as time had gone on, but it's really a fascinating medium that she's chosen for herself, because with the photography, she is stopping time. She is making time stand still. And, you know, she's capturing moments which can never be recreated. So it's really interesting that she found her way to photography. I mean, what I think is so fascinating about this piece that she did is it looks like a painting. It's got such a painterly quality to it. In actual fact, it's photography. And, you know, just looking at her clothes, looking at the background, it looks like someone has spent a long time painting and trying to, you know, get the lighting right. Well, actually, Lene Marie spent a long time trying to get the lighting right. And what I mean by that is when she would go to abandoned buildings, she would wait till certain times of the day. So she got a certain type of light, you know, and that's how she would create these amazing works. You know, there's other photographers who use this, you know, who also use a kind of lighting in that way, and it has really beautiful effects. I mean, me myself, I don't have a set, like, you know, a big photography setup, but I feature in a lot of the things that I put out, and so some of my photographs, some of my best photographs for when I put things out are when I photographed myself or I photographed the object at the crack of dawn, like I'm talking about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. and the sun is really coming up, and it's just got such a beautiful effect. And I think this is a really, obviously you have to wait for the right time, but if you're patient, and you can achieve some amazing things. So I think it really shows in her artwork. Here we really see her body as well. So she brings, so she's not here to cover up the body. She's not here to place herself in this kind of, angel position, or, she shows the pain as well as the beauty. So there's so much beauty in this work, and it's such a rich piece, but at the same time you see the pain, and the way her eyes are closed as well. It's not kind of like this, there's an, it's not like a peaceful kind of expression. It feels like she has a lot that she's thinking about. She's in deep contemplation about things that trouble her. I just, it's a really, really emotive piece, and I think it is one of her most outstanding pieces. But I could say that about everything I'm going to show you. So I need to kind of speak a bit less. Okay, so the Gatekeeper. So there's a traveling exhibition called the Gatekeeper. The last exhibition was it's been touring, and also they will show at 2 or 3 different galleries or museums. So the last one was in Switzerland, and it was in 2021. So I don't know when we next have the opportunity to see her work, but that means we need to keep an eye on her website, and we really need to pay attention for this one, because as soon as there's an opportunity, I know that I'm gonna do my best to travel to see it. So there's also a book of her artwork. I've invited you into my library this evening, and I'm afraid I don't have a book for Lene Marie because it's sold out, and I would absolutely expect that, because her work is stunning. And so I don't know when it will be available again, if there will be more available on the website in the future, but at the moment it's sold out. And if it becomes available again, I'm going to take one of those copies. So. But here's a picture of Lene Marie. To me, she feels ethereal here. So, she's like an angel to me, but also she's like a human. And she has this beauty and this almost like, it's like she's, I don't even know, like a Victorian lady in her dress, and then she's a child, and she's, with the angel, you've got that kind of, angels are hard to kind of pin down, like between the adult and the child, between the female and the male, and I really see that in her as well. But for me, it's like, it's almost like she's transcending the pain here. It's almost meditative. And again, it's like a painting. I mean, I've seen the most beautiful paintings in the museums and galleries, and the way her dress looks in this picture is like, so again, do see Lene Marie's website to see, the source of these artworks, and where they're shown online. Here again, it's a fascinating picture, absolutely fascinating. Again, there's that exposure of the body. It almost feels like she's becoming part of that building, or that she has some kind of connection with that building, like the depth of her emotion and what she's seen and what she's experienced, and the building, the way it's housed so many experiences and seen so many things, so to speak. It's almost like she's connecting with it, like, I get it, I understand, this is almost like how I feel. And at the same time, with the head against the wall, it's almost like, I don't know, it's just like there's real pain there. There's something we can't see. So we can see her we can see that she's she seems quite fragile in her structure, but there's things that we don't know in that picture. We don't know why or what the pain is, but we can still read it. And at the same time, the way the garment hangs of her, you know, this is like a painterly study here. Okay, this is probably I think this is probably my favorite work from Lene Marie. I actually think this is probably my number one. Where do you start? I mean, it's just fascinating. So, for example, we've got this massive building, we've got the height of those windows, the height of that door. I mean, we're not talking about a regular door here. This looks like a really, you know, high ceilinged space. And we have this tiny, tiny human. But also we see that we've got, again, the decay, we've got the stripping of the plaster from the walls, we've got that exposure of the brickwork, that, you know, that rough texture is back. We're not talking about either a clinical white space, we're also not talking about a homely space where it's warm. We're talking about a space which, as you know, we can see the tree branches coming through. We're talking about a space here which is being taken back by the environment. You know, it feels like that those vines or that tree could have almost broken through that wall and just started grabbing it back. So there's a level of decay, and it might just be those branches are lying on the floor. But because it's, and this is another really important reason for going to see artworks in real life, because if I, you know, I'm looking at this and it's quite, you know, it's small compared to what it would be in the gallery, or even if she had it small, you know, you can really see the detail. This is a high-res image, so, you know, it might just be a case that those branches are just lying there, but again, it does bring that element of, you know, nature and also decay. I mean, there's, okay, so the branches, so maybe it's not so much that growth back in, but it's it's probably more the decay, the death, the branches are dead. I don't know if there's any growth there. I don't think there is actually. Okay, so guys, let me just have a good look. Okay, yeah, so I can see it hasn't come through the wall, they've been laid there. But everything there, it's not at its best, it's not as vibrant, it's not at it's not in its youth, it's not in its first flurry of life, you know. And it's really interesting because Lene Marie is alive, she is present, she is there. And so it's a, you know, it's a real juxtaposition. But then at the same time, she's very she seems very vulnerable, but then she's not vulnerable at the same time. So her statues could could give that sense of vulnerability, but actually the way she holds herself and the way she looks forward, you know, there's so much that she can tell you. There's so much strength in her and so much perseverance in her, you know what I mean? So there's, again, there's that, it's not just, there's a contrast of like pain and beauty, but there's also this contrast between strength and vulnerability. And I feel like more than anything, she really gets to explore that sense of strength through her photography, because not only is she an absolute master of the camera, I mean, she's, you know, so you've got that, so you know the gravity of something that you're looking at, because it is just so, you know, it stops you in your tracks. But she's also gets to pose herself, you know, in her photograph and present herself where that strength comes through. And, you know, she's on her own, so we're not comparing and contrasting, and this is her. And it's just such a powerful work. That's so funny that I thought the tree was going through. I think it's because I've actually I don't know actually. I just felt like the but no, it's not. It's not. It's the branches are in you know they've died. So and also the lighting in this is fantastic. So if you look at the lighting, we've got that big, you know, we've got the big dark kind of overbearing window. So it's not the window so much. It's like the framing of the windows. You know, that big black dark door. But then we've got Lene Marie dressed in white, and she's standing next to that door, and the light's coming through. That natural light is coming through, and so it really changes that space. Next one. Okay, I have to be careful. I can talk forever. Okay, this one's fascinating. So again, we're back to this kind of painterly quality now. And when I look at Lene Marie here, she looks like a child. She does. She looks like very, very small. But it looks also like the space that she's looking down into. So I don't know if that's a bath or, you know, assume that might be a bath. The space she's looking into is so vast, it's so big, it's so unknown. You know, it's dark, it looks like even if it were a bath, it could just go on into like a deep hole. And she's hanging on to, I don't know if that's a bit of railing or a pipe, but she's hanging on to it, and she's not hanging on to it like for dear life. She's hanging on to it with some trepidation of what's below her. And it's really, I mean, it's a really poignant work. And I think as well, if you're someone who comes to this work who has been through trauma or disorder of some description, the idea of looking down into that cavernous who knows what, it really strikes a chord. It really, you know, it's like a void. Like, what is this? We don't know what's going to come next. And there's an element of holding back and an element of I've got to go through. And you know, people can bring so much to Lene Marie's work because she really is putting that beauty and pain and psychology within the image. It's there, but for each of us, we can explore it in different ways and we can still connect. So you don't have to have the same pain or the same experience to have that connection as a human about what it's like to go through pain and what it's like to suffer. And some people's experiences are more extreme than others, you know. So very much the children that we were looking at the beginning who were refugees, for someone who's never been through that pain as a child, it's something that we can never know in the same way that they will know. But at the same time, we can understand those emotions and those kind of, you know, and the grief, and we can connect with it. We can, it's visible to us. We can be conscious of it even if we don't have the same experience. And so, you know, this is a really important work. Okay, this for me is fascinating. Like, also, okay, so I'm going to have a few quotes from Lene Marie coming up soon, which will give a bit more context to why you know, I mean, I think this is a fascinating image in the first place because we have Lene Marie split into two. And it's almost like Lene Marie the artist and Lene Marie, you know, the person who has an eating disorder. So we have, you know, and it's like, it's almost like two people, but we know it's one person. And it's almost like, the way I look at it sometimes, because with my PTSD, the way I look at it is that I'm almost reasoning with myself. So I have this PTSD mode, and then I have what clear thinking would be, I suppose. I don't know how to describe it so much. That's why artwork can be literally the key to unlocking some of this stuff and like making connections with other people without having to kind of try and define it in words. You know, you can just feel, you don't have to explain. But it's kind of like, I talk to myself as two people, because there's disordered thinking where it's like, no, I can't do this, I can't, oh, I'm scared of blah, 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 blah. And then there's the other side of me, which is, okay, this is disordered thinking. You're okay, you're going to be okay. And I'm always having to talk to myself and be connected to myself. And I don't have so much of a battle with that. But with the other self, I understand the other side. I understand the PTSD mode, and I say, look, I get it, but it's going to be okay. So I would assume that, you know, for Lene Marie, well, no, we don't need to assume anything. So when I see Lene Marie's work, I get that kind of battle. That's what I kind of see in that, the battle between your healthy self and your disordered self, your self that's not thinking in terms of life and longevity. It's thinking in terms of, like, you know, this thing that you set for yourself. For her, it was, you know, trying to stop time. For other people, well, we'll explore how it kind of manifests for other people as the videos go along, because I'm going to talk about different people with different eating disorders and how they've coped with it, how other people have related to that. And you know, there's so many different philosophies and ways of living that people develop for themselves, and it's very hard to challenge, and it's very hard to. Okay, so another thing I'd like to say, which is quite fascinating, is Lene Marie is conscious of her anorexia, and she doesn't shy away from showing her body. And she's not showing it in a way of, you know, glorification, or in the same way she's not showing it in a way of critical way either. She's showing it because it's her body. This is her body. This is her. You know, and I think that's really well done, because if she, for example, had a photographer, they might take a certain angle, but that communication, when you're the photographer and it's between, you know, you're the photographer and the model, you have obviously a very direct relationship with yourself. And I think when you're with the photographer, the artist, I mean, I've been the model for the artists in the past, and the feeling that I had was they are so fascinated in you during the shoot and what they're trying to achieve and creating the work. And then it's over, and then it's like, bye then. And then they go on, and that's part of their body of work. And for you, that was an experience, and it's over, and it's on to the next experience. You know, so there is a level of feeling almost rejected by the photographer, even knowing by the nature of what they do, they need to look at different subjects. You know, it's not just about you. Even if they have a muse, they tend to have more muses. So I think the relationship between the photographer and the model as one person is, you know, and that's what I do myself. I photograph myself, and so there's no self-consciousness. So what you see is me. There's no covering, there's no staging. It's me and a camera. And I think, you know, it's a really interesting position. Oh, I want to say one more thing, actually, because I was talking. So the fact that she is open about her anorexia, in terms that she's, you know, that's her diagnosis. She's got these metal beds behind her, and I think that's had a really interesting effect on this artwork, because because the the part of her skeletal system, you know, her bones are more kind of prominent, almost line up with those metal structures. There's almost an element of X-ray here, an X-ray into her psychology, or an X-ray into the body and the space. And I think, you know, it's really something to go and have a look at and see how you feel. Okay, so again, when I was talking about your disorder, having, you know, it's like you're two people, and then we have another self-portrait here, and the way that it's come out, it looks like Lene Marie is being gripped by another person. It's almost like another person who's the torment, who's trying to take her this way, and she's reaching down, her face is coming out more, she's trying to go this way, but she's in the grips of something. And here's a quote from Lene Marie when she talks about her anorexia as a prison where the illness makes all the decisions. And you know, this photograph really, this is why I put this particular quote with this photograph, because I think this really encapsulates it, that something's got a grip around her. And she's still standing, she's still moving, but there's a pain on her face, there's a strain. Well, this other thing turns to the side, it's not even connecting with her, it's just gripping her. And I think that's a really interesting way to, and you know, often with these photographs, oh, let me go back, sorry, I need to read another quote from Lene Marie, but often with these photographs, you don't know what's going to come out. There's an element of purpose, but there's also an element of surprise and experimentation. So I think this is fascinating. Okay, so for Lene Marie, there is so I wrote this isn't a quote, but I'll quote her in a minute. Okay, so for Lene Marie, there is a dichotomy between needing to live to make her art, and then the acceptance, in her own words, that her illness, quote Lene Marie, is a slow suicide. So the dichotomy is, to be an artist, I need to be alive, I need to be working, I need to be experimenting, practicing, meeting people, connecting, and really working with my medium. But for Lene Marie, her anorexia has really taken a grip, and there's only so long her body can survive with that kind of, you know, with that kind of restriction on it. Because the problem is when you restrict your food, and you know, for some people you may develop anorexia nervosa, you may develop bulimia nervosa, you may be binge eating, and then, you know, using you know, kind of having those patterns of bulimia where, you know, you'll binge eat and then you're like, no, I can't, I need to get it out my body like now, I'm going to be 100 stone heavier if I don't, it's got to be now. And, you know, there's so we've got that, you know, side of things. And then we've also got, if you're overeating and putting that strain on your body, so in a different way, so if you're undereating, the body isn't getting the nutrients it needs, it's not getting the energy, the nourishment, you know, your muscles require, you know, the food and water, your skeleton does, you know, your bones. So if you're not thinking about this within the things that you eat or the things that you don't eat, then you're in a position where the bones over time will become weakened and the organs will start to shut down. And this is the horrible side of the eating disorder. There's the pain and the anguish and the things that go on in your head, but also on a very kind of, on a biological level, it's not sustainable for life, you know. And that's why eating disorders is so difficult, because some of the philosophies that we develop around our disordered thinking are so vital to us, yet when we're talking about biology and sustaining life, they're absolutely contradicting a long life and good health. And so, you know, she recognizes that, you know, this is a very slow and painful way of actually deteriorating, but it's also something that happens, you know, you can't sustain this for a long time. So it happens to people when they're young. Lene Marie was 33. So we need to kind of recognize that. It's like when you see this kind of parallel between old and young with Lene Marie, it's like she's a young person living in an old body because her body cannot sustain the philosophy of that she wants to stop time at the age of 10. So, you know, this really is such a tension, such a crisis for her as an artist. Okay, so I just wanted to show this picture because it's quite different to the other ones, and I just think this is fascinating. It's like really hopeful in a way. It's almost like something freeing about it, like she's almost letting herself, I don't know, like where she was resisting to jump forward, almost holding to the side. Here it's almost let me experience this, let me feel this, let's just go with it. And I suppose what I bring to this picture is when I was going through PTSD at the beginning, there was so much pain that I got to a point where I just stood there and I said, if anything else is going to happen, let it happen. Everything's painful right now. It can't get more painful. Let's just get it all out. Let's just, if anything else has got to happen, let's have it now. Because you almost get this like, I've got to the height of my sensations, and so I can take it. You know, there's almost this strength when you're at your most troubled. I don't know, it's again dichotomy. You know, it's so hard to kind of it's almost hard to put into words sometimes, and that I think that's why Lene Marie is such an exquisite photographer and artist, because she does put that into a frame, you know. And so we have the okay, so really I should keep going now. So so we have you know, quite a dark setting with the dark window and then that white dress, and on her face as well, you know, I don't see the same pain. I see kind of a it's okay kind of, you know, I accept, or I know what's going to happen, or I'm going to let myself go into this. Because I suppose it's also the notion that I'm seeing her from behind. It almost looks like she's going to let herself fall backwards. She might just be doing you know, dancing. See, that's why it's what you bring to it. Okay, so my photographs are not about anorexia, they're about human suffering. Lene Marie Fossen. So this is really a really important point. She's not making a statement about anorexia. She's very much talking to you as one human to another about the human experience of pain. So here we see another picture, you know, and you know, again, Lene Marie almost is part of that building. It's almost like whatever happened in that room to that bed, and that kind of, you know, this metal bed with this thin mattress is a hardship, and it feels like it's happened to her as well. And there's so much that she could tell you, but I feel like almost would she be able to? There's so much, like capturing her in this moment, you know, expresses so much. But it's an interesting contrast. It's almost like she could be part of the she could be from in a refugee status, for example, or someone that's come from a war-torn place, you know, if you put this picture in front of me and I'd never ever heard of Lene Marie, I'd never seen her, I'd never experienced her, and I just came to her as a subject, I would assume that, you know, she may well have been through some kind of displacing or some kind of you know, that how would I explain? Well, very much like she may have come from a war-torn country where she's had to run away and she only has her clothes, and she, you know, there's so many things that you can bring to this image. And really all that we can take from this image is that there's suffering and there's hardship and we don't know why. And it's interesting. So when I say, oh, you know, we could look at, you know, when I look at it, she could be from here, she could, it's that human kind of compulsion to create a narrative. And I'm trying to create this narrative about, well, why would she be here? Why would it be like this? Why is the wall got all this dark across it? Why is this really like kind of old, restricted, you know, this metal bed? And what's happened? Why is her dress like hanging off? And then there's that temptation to create a narrative. So as Lene Marie says, my photographs are not about anorexia, they're about human suffering. So equally, they're not about where she's come from or what she's been exposed to, they're about that point of suffering. Okay. Now, this is probably the most important quote to me in this whole presentation. I'm afraid of getting well, afraid it will affect my art negatively. Lene Marie Fossen. As someone who has a diagnosis with post-traumatic stress disorder, but as someone who has this trauma, when you go through trauma, your experience of pain is widened and widened to such an extent that, like, you can almost, I go between this rageful, angry feelings towards things to like this child, like this little girl who's like overjoyed by what she's seeing and almost can't explain it because I'm so excited. And there's always kind of going between the two, and there's not a lot in between. So I'm either really, oh, I'm so angry at a situation, or I'm like, oh, I'm in wonderment. So no, I mean, you know, I sit and I talk and, you know, absolutely, you know, I can be quite balanced, but I just mean when something really affects my emotions and triggers me in a certain way, it can either really trigger me to have this real deep expression of anger, or to have this like joyous, like wow moment. And I myself am looking into EMDR therapy, and one of my biggest fears has been, what if I start getting well and I don't understand things anymore? I can't talk about PTSD anymore. I can't relate to people anymore. And that exposure to those kind of emotions kind of goes away. You know, it might make my life easier, but what will happen? How will it affect me as a person and my output as an artist, as a writer, as someone who makes videos? How will it affect me? And for me, I would say, you know, I have to keep reminding myself it's not going to change me in that sense. It will help me to be able to live a more healthy life and to process a lot of trauma and emotions that really interfere. But at the same time, when you go through those emotions, you have real connection with other people because of those emotions. So I can very quickly, and this is not someone, I heard there was a man who said this the other night, or I was listening to something and he said, one of my talents, I mean, maybe it's a curse, but one of the things that I can really do is feel other people's pain and really understand it. And I was like, it's not really a talent. That's actually something that, well, I mean, it's something that you hone, definitely. You know, you can shut yourself off to people, or you can kind of be open to the fact that other people are traumatized and be able to experience that with them. So I personally would not sit around reading about people's trauma and going to watch people talk about trauma and when they're very much in trauma. But if I'm with someone on an individual basis and they start talking about it, I literally, you know, I respect their vulnerability and I listen, because that's their trauma, and it's really important that they express themselves. And I feel very humbled that they want me to give them that space to do so, that they trust me in that way, or that they at least feel compelled to open up. If I have my therapy, so I'm going for EMDR therapy, so I already have therapy, but if I was to go for the EMDR therapy, would that disappear? Would I not have that connection? Would I not feel that pain? When I write poetry, would it not flow through me anymore? You know, when I look at someone like Lene Marie, would I not be able to have some kind of connection with her because I don't feel that pain? Well, the reality is no. You know, I'll still be able to, because you've been through an experience. You know, you don't take away the experience, you take away all those kind of like really deep connections that are really kind of keeping you in a disordered way. But even knowing all that, I still think, oh, but, and so this, what she says there, like literally struck a chord. It went straight to the heart. It was like, absolutely. That's a big thing for people. If you find a voice and you find a way of connecting to people, even if it is through something with, you know, trauma, which can be, you know, through a life of anorexia and all this, the battle that comes with that, or it can be through, you know, the children and their in their refugee position, where they've clearly been removed from a situation which is, you know, it's in their eyes. Will you connect with those people if you get well? Will you see that anymore? And the answer is yes, we will see it. It's just really hard to, you know, and I think, you know, it's like you get this flow of, I need to do work, I need to explore, I need to write, I need to have output. There's almost an urgency once you've been through something really, really mind-blowing for you. And so one of my fears is, if I were to have the therapy, would I lose that sense of urgency that I need to get it out? Would I go back to the whole, maybe next week, I'll just write a post-it note, I'll just think about it later? When you've been through something really hardcore, it's like there's an urgency to emote, or an urgency to be able to have a voice, because often you've been quiet for so long, or you haven't understood, so you couldn't express, and so now that voice is so powerful to you. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, that is one of the things that a lot of people go through when they know that their pain has been a force for their artwork, or it's been a force for them to take action in certain ways. They don't want to dull that effect. And you get used to feeling pain, you get used to it, but you shouldn't get used to it. You don't have to have it. You don't have to live like that. And if you are in a position where you're experiencing pain right now due to your situation, it's always keeping in mind, I will get out. There'll be an opportunity and I'm going to take it. And that's how we keep hope and we move forward. Okay, so I've only got one. This is my last picture of Lene Marie. And again, it's that setting where she's next to the metal beds, and they're not lined up like before, they're actually in a pile. And I think, even knowing she's got her you know, quite a bird-like body, she's very, very cute and fragile, you want to protect her. She's also like, you don't need to protect me. She's got her head up, she's got that defiant pose. She's like, you know, I've been through a lot and I have strength. I can do this. This is me. I don't need you to hold me up. I don't need you to hug me. this is what I've been through. I'm here, I'm present. And there's a real dominance in the way that she stands and pushes her hips out, you know, and I just think this is where I want to finish, because she has anorexia. She has, clearly her body has taken a toll from, you know, this disease that she has, or this you know, condition, however you want to. I mean, I personally, when I talk about trauma, I call it a condition, but it's really more what you feel comfortable with. And I think, you know, say they refer to it as a disease on her website, and this disease has ravaged her body, but she has this strength and this, you know, and that really comes through. And again, she's like this white light against that like dark metal background, you know. So I think that this is a really good image to finish with, because of her defiance in the face of everything, her defiance, such strength. And there, that's our last picture of Lene Marie. And I just wanted to finish on one. This is not an artist photograph, you know, in terms of her like project. This is Lene Marie. This is who she is. This is who she was. And you know, she's a very beautiful, intelligent, creative lady. She's such a strong energy, and even knowing she's past the energy and strength in her work and the power to move people and to connect with all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life, you know, whatever they've been through, that you know, that is such a massive thing to come out of such a small body. You know, and I think that, you know, I really, really, really hope that you will go and have a look at Lene Marie's work. Now, I've decided, because I've talked forever, that I'm going to look at Lene Marie's TED Talk in a separate video. So I'll put that in the second video. And so, yeah, we'll finish here. And I would like to say thank you so much to Lene Marie Fossen for the work that she has given us, because it's inspirational, and it's also really direct, and it really, really encapsulates some really challenging things. And I also really thank everyone, you know, her family and her supporters and everybody that still brings her artwork for the rest of us to be able to experience, and who now manage her legacy. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that we have the opportunity to be able to experience Lene Marie, even knowing we cannot meet her in person. Okay, so next video will be Lene Marie's TED Talk. All right, thank you so much. And let me stop sharing first, and I'll say goodbye properly. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. It's been a long video. If you've persevered, that's wonderful. I don't think it takes too much perseverance when you've got such rich material to look at, but then with me talking over the top, you know. So thank you very much, and please do take a look at her artwork, because it's outstanding. And yeah, join me for the next video, where we're going to look at Lene Marie's TED Talk, where she's going to be talking and she's going to tell you her thoughts and her feelings and about her work. Okay then, bye.